A lot of people are talking about moving to Puerto Rico as a way to stay on U.S. soil and yet dramatically reduce their tax burden. In this video, I'm going to share an overview of how Puerto Rico's tax incentives work and give you the pros and cons of Puerto Rico versus going overseas. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson. Puerto Rico is on the radar of a lot of people right now. I'm hearing a lot of people talking about it. And so for that reason, I think this is going to be a bit of a controversial video because I'm going to give an opinion that goes against what some of the promoters of Puerto Rico's tax incentives are talking about. Anytime something reaches a certain level of mass, you've got a lot of people out there selling you on how easy it is. But what I'm going to do is give you an overview and walk you through what I believe the pros and cons are. If you'd like more in-depth videos on Puerto Rico, definitely leave a comment below and we will try and do that. So how does Puerto Rico and their tax incentives work? There are a couple of different options. The main ones are Act 20 and Act 22. So with Act 20, you can move your business to Puerto Rico, and any business that is exporting services from Puerto Rico can pay a flat 4% tax rate, and then a 0% dividend tax rate. So basically, if you are running a business in the United States and you're paying either through an LLC or a C corporation, and you have a very high rate of taxation, you can move that business to Puerto Rico and you can pay basically a flat 4% on that. So for a lot of people, you're going to save 90% of your tax burden simply by moving that business to Puerto Rico and ticking the boxes for Act 20. Act 22, you can reduce capital gains taxes to 0 by being in Puerto Rico. But there are some areas of confusion. Now, the business part is relatively straightforward. You need to run your business from Puerto Rico, and that's where it needs to be. On the capital gains side, what you have to understand is if you've already started incurring capital gains, let's say you're like the gentleman who came to me recently who's built up a software company that's now valued at about $18 million. He plans on it going to $100 million. Now, that business, in his case, has already been running for 5 years. So if he sells it in another 5 years, he's going to only get half of the capital gains exemption because it's already been brewing for the last 5 years. You don't just get to simply move to Puerto Rico and the next day sell all your assets and be capital gains tax free. It's not that easy. But if you're an investor, if you're a trader, if you're running certain types of businesses, you can go and avail of tax rates anywhere between 0 and 4% depending on what you're doing. Now, how does this work? There are a couple of different tests that you need to meet. The first one is the presence test. Are you going to be physically present in Puerto Rico? Contrary to what some people believe, you do need to actually be in Puerto Rico. The next is the tax home test. Puerto Rico needs to be your tax home. And then there's the closer connection test. You need to have a closer connection to Puerto Rico than you do to the U.S. mainland or wherever else you are coming from, but really the U.S. mainland. So those are the three tests that you have to meet. And so what that means for most people in most situations is you need to be in Puerto Rico physically 183 days a year. What has concerned me over the couple of years that I've heard people's feedback on this is I hear a lot of what I call corner cutting. I hear people saying, maybe I'll take a dinghy to some other Caribbean island and nobody will know. I'll just kind of come and go. Probably not even workable, but definitely a bad idea. This is not an area where you want to cut corners or else the IRS is going to come down on you on a ton of bricks. And so you want to be in Puerto Rico and meet the physical presence requirements, generally 183 days. Puerto Rico needs to be your tax home. It also needs to be that you have a closer connection with Puerto Rico. And so what does that mean? It means that you need to have stronger ties with Puerto Rico than the state that you are leaving in the US. This is not entirely dissimilar to what all the other people in the world, the Canadians, the Australians, etc., have to go through when they become tax non-resident in their home countries, where they have to say, hey, my bank and my driver's license and my this and my that is now over here. I have a closer connection to this country over here than I do to the one that I'm leaving. And so why that matters is you don't just get to leave all the trappings of your life in the mainland. You have to establish an actual bona fide life in Puerto Rico. So those are a few things that you want to consider. And again, feel free to leave a comment if you want us to go more into depth on these topics. Here are the benefits. And I think that My friend and mentor, Matt Dubiel, summed this up very well, where he said, if you can be like Grant Cardone, who said, I left California because of the high taxes. If you can move from California to Florida to save on taxes, and you can upend your family and change your life and go to a new place, if you can do that, then you can go to Puerto Rico. And I'll add the next piece. If you can go to Puerto Rico, then you can go to Panama or really anywhere else in the world. And so what I think the pro is that moving to Puerto Rico makes people feel comfortable. There's this feeling that I'm still on US soil. Even though Puerto Rico is a different place, chances are you haven't lived there, because if you have been living there, you're not eligible for this program. So it's going to be a different place. But the pro is it's easier for a lot of people to digest. They're not leaving the United States. They're not venturing out into that great unknown of the rest of the world that the State Department tells you not to visit. And so with that means you don't have to renounce your citizenship. Now, you don't have to renounce your citizenship to be offshore either, but it comes with this idea that I'm keeping everything in the US, I get to be patriotic, I get to keep my citizenship, and I have the right to spend a bit more time in the US on the mainland than I would if I were going offshore and taking advantage of offshore tax savings from the US government. And so there's a bit more flexibility there. However, the downside to that is you really do need to have that closer connection to Puerto Rico. So that means even though you get a bit more time in the mainland, you're locked down to spending a significant amount of time in Puerto Rico and legitimately being there. If you're single, that means I hope you like dating Puerto Ricans, because there aren't a lot of Russians or Ukrainians or Thais running around in Puerto Rico. If you have a family, I hope that you feel comfortable with the infrastructure that's there. There are a lot of great places to live in Puerto Rico, but you have to be committed to that's going to be your main home. And so let's compare Puerto Rico and being able to spend those 4, 5, 5.5 months in the US, depending on your situation, with going offshore. So if you go offshore, you can take advantage of the foreign earned income exclusion. You can exempt a certain amount of your income from your business and from your salary, really, about $106,000 this year, plus standard deduction. You can exempt that. If you've got a spouse and they work with you, then you can increase that. Well, let's just stick with that number around $100,000. Above that, the strategies become more complicated. You can potentially get the tax rate on that to be relatively low, but not quite to 4%. And so, the question is, how much money are you making? If you're making millions of dollars a year and your time in the United States, having substantial amounts of time in the United States mainland are important to you, then Puerto Rico may be a great deal. You pay between 0 and 4% and you're done. You can clean your hands of it. But by going offshore, you have more flexibility. Under the foreign earned income exclusion, there are 2 tests. There's the bona fide residence test, which means you have another tax home similar to Puerto Rico, but it could be any country in the world. It could be here in Malaysia, it could be Panama, it could be anywhere. And as long as that country has a friendly tax policy that's going to leave you alone, you'll pay 0 in that country, and then you'll just have the US tax to deal with. And so you get to choose where you're going rather than being forced into Puerto Rico. The other benefit is the second test of the foreign earned income exclusion, which is what's called the physical presence test, which is as long as you're in the US for a very small amount of time every year, as long as you're in a foreign country or countries for the majority of your time every year, the US doesn't really care where you're at. There's not a provision where you have to have a closer connection. Your tax home is simply wherever you're at. And as long as you're not getting into someone else's tax net, then you've got life pretty easy. Again, are you going to get the taxes as low on a large income? If you're the 6 or 7 figure entrepreneur that's coming to us, are you going to get your income tax down to 4% by going offshore on $1 million business? Close, but probably not quite. Depending on your situation, there may be ways to go to 0, but for most US citizens, no, you're not going to quite reach Puerto Rico's benefits. So the question is, why go offshore? From my point of view, you get a lot more flexibility. If you want to live in 12 different places, 1 month a year, you can. If you want to follow my trifecta approach and have a summer home, have a winter home, have a home that's the spring and fall place. If you want to take lots of vacations to different countries, if you want to spend your summers all over Europe, you can do that without having to put down roots anywhere. You have the flexibility to change your mind. You're not getting into one system that forces you to be there. That's a decision each person will make for their own. Now, the secondary con about Puerto Rico is that there are only certain types of businesses that Act 20 is going to work for. So certain businesses that are selling digital stuff, just aren't going to work in my opinion and in the opinion of the tax professionals that back me up on this stuff. So this is not a panacea for everybody. There may be certain people who just don't qualify. As with anything in US and offshore tax, the answer to all of your questions is it depends. This is an introduction to which approach you might favor more. If you're single, quite frankly, I think you're probably going to want to be traveling. Even if it means paying an extra couple percentage points in tax, you're still going to be saving quite a substantial amount. If you've got a family, it's more in play in my consideration of whether you want to settle down somewhere overseas or whether Puerto Rico works for you. It's just a matter of, do you want to live in Puerto Rico? Is that lifestyle adjustment worth it in order to have the tax savings, or would you rather have more freedom with a bit more complicated plan? Either way, leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what you think about this, and I would love to hear which option you prefer. Hi, I'm Andrew Henderson from Nomad Capitalist. I wrote this book, which you can find on Amazon, to distill a lot of the stuff we talk about in these videos and a lot of the stuff I've learned over the last decade plus traveling all around the world, teaching you about how to legally reduce your taxes, build your personal freedom, and create wealth faster. Definitely get a copy of this book if you want to learn more. Now, if you want to watch more videos, make sure you subscribe to our channel and make sure you click the notifications bell so you never miss one of our new videos with more tips on how to go where you're treated best. And if you're already a 6 or 7 figure entrepreneur and you'd like to put these strategies in place for yourself, go to nomadcapitalist.com and learn about how I can help you.